Margaret, will you marry me? Because I would like to date you. Hello everyone, welcome to episode number 98 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about airbrushing. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get into today's topic, I've got two major things that I want to say. First off, we're getting into March, so new releases of things are starting to come out. So on the day of this episode's release, we're going to have Raya and the Last Dragon. I'm going to be watching that on Friday, or the day that this releases, I'm going to be watching it, and then next week, we're going to be talking about a review for that. And then we're going to be getting Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is why we're talking about the first Justice League today. And then at the end of the month, we get Godzilla vs. King Kong. However, my wife is very pregnant right now. We're getting very close to having a baby here. So that could really happen at any time at this point. And if that happens, and if I'm not able to put out an episode because of that, that's totally fine by me. I hope it's fine by you guys as well. So if you don't see an episode on my end here, might be because I'm dealing with a newborn. We'll see if I still have the time to squeeze in an episode or not, though. I have no idea what my life is going to be like in a couple weeks' time once the baby is here, so everything is going to be completely different. Today, though, we are talking about Justice League, the movie that came out in 2017. Now, we're getting close to, like I said, Zack Snyder's Justice League is coming out in a couple of weeks here, and my opinions on that aside, I'm going to save that for when I sit down and actually talk about that. But for today, I want to talk about this movie. Now, I rewatched it last night. It was my first time watching it since opening weekend in the theater. Opening weekend 2017, I do believe it came out in November. I went with my wife and I think my brother-in-law, and we went and watched it in IMAX, and I was just monumentally disappointed by this movie. I don't think it's very good. 4 years later, I still don't think very highly of it, but there are aspects of this movie that aren't completely awful. So I'm going to talk about that today. We're going to talk some positives, some negatives, and there's going to be spoilers throughout the episode. I'm not going to divide it between non-spoilers and spoilers. We're just going to talk about it forever. Because really, if you're interested in Justice League in this episode, you've probably seen it, or DC and Warner Brothers as a whole is just kind of sweeping this movie under the rug and is going to make the new Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the canon version. So I have no idea what is really going to happen as far as the DCU. I have some thoughts on that I'm going to save for the end of today's episode. But for now, we're talking about spoilers. Now, what I found interesting about this movie is, for one, it's credited as being directed by Zack Snyder, because what happened during the production of this movie is that Zack Snyder was directing it, and then for personal reasons, he left the production. He wasn't able to work on it anymore, and they were running into all kinds of problems with the story and the structure and things that are going on. So they brought in Joss Whedon. Now, you may know Joss Whedon as the creator of Firefly, and he's written a bunch of different things. He's probably most famous, though, for doing the first two Avengers movies. So he did Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, and now they brought him in to kind of help out with Justice League. And then he was supposed to do a Batwoman movie, and that ended up kind of falling apart, and that project isn't happening anymore. But he came in to do Justice League, and from what I understand, they reshot about 70% of this movie. They did some heavy rewrites and reshot a lot of things. And so most of this movie is stuff that was shot by Joss Whedon. And so I'm really curious and interested as to why the opening of the movie credits Zack Snyder. I think at least it should probably credit them both, because they were both heavily involved in the project. Now, Joss Whedon did get a writing credit at the beginning of the film, so there's at least that, I suppose. But anyway, the story of this movie is that Superman is dead. He died at the end of Batman v Superman, and the world is in mourning. Now, because Superman is dead, that leaves the world open to otherworldly attacks. So Batman is tracking down a parademon, and this parademon is a scout and is a herald for others to come, and so this attack from this other world is imminent and could happen at any time. Later on, we find out that the leader of this attack is a character named Steppenwolf, and he is there from the planet Apocalypse, and he is trying to track down these 3 mother boxes, and you combine the mother boxes together, you get the Unity, which is power itself, so that they can terraform the Earth into a recreation of his homeworld Apocalypse. Now, that sounds a lot like Man of Steel, where General Zod comes down to Earth and uses his world engine to try and change the Earth into a new Krypton. So we're kind of recycling plots here, I see. But I don't think that's a huge deal because this is not where the movie's problems start to come for me. I don't have a problem with this story per se. It's a lot of MacGuffin chasing and hiding, but there's a lot of things jammed into this movie. And that's probably what I have the most issues with. This movie does a lot of setting up. I was keeping an eye on the time while I was watching the movie, and 35 minutes in, this movie is still setting things up and introducing characters for the first time. It takes a really long time to get all the pieces in place, and normally that's not a problem, but it is a problem when your movie is only an hour and 50 minutes long. Now, it says that it's 2 hours, but it's a full 10 minutes of credits and 2 post-credit scenes. So actual movie story, we're only getting about an hour and 50 minutes here. So we do not have a lot of time to waste on doing a lot of setup. We need to make this stuff a little bit brisker, and that's part of the problem with this movie is it takes a while to get going. And then building on that, we have an issue with wasting time. Like I said, this movie's only an hour and 50 minutes long. We don't have time to waste. So there are some very specific things that this movie wastes time on that I want to talk about right now. For one, the Russian family. Throughout the movie, we're going to Russia and we're seeing this poor family who's living in a house by themselves, and then they're being attacked by parademons, and then eventually the Flash saves them and kind of makes all that screen time worth it. I don't think all of this was necessary. We could have filled in this time for other things, for more character development. This movie has very little character development going on, and I would have liked a whole lot more. Once I'm done talking about all of these wastes of time, I'm going to talk about the characters themselves and how they interact and all of that. But for right now, that Russian family, I don't need it. We could have cut it out completely. Another waste of time is J.K. Simmons is in this movie, and he plays Commissioner Gordon, leader of the police force in Gotham, and he is in one scene, 1.5 scenes. He has almost no screen time, and really the information that he gives us, we didn't need to receive it from him. We could have gotten it in another way, in a more streamlined fashion, and just cut to the chase, get the information we need, and move on to the next part of the story. I feel like J.K. Simmons being in this movie is more of a token casting than anything else. Granted, I really liked him, and the little bits that he is on screen I found really enjoyable, but I just feel like we didn't need him. But that's okay, because there's people in this movie that we need even less, and that is Amber Heard. Amber Heard, who is in Aquaman, she makes an appearance in this movie. There's an underwater fighting sequence where Steppenwolf comes down and he takes one of the mother boxes. And speaking of wasting time, when Steppenwolf is stealing the mother boxes, these action sequences are very, very short. They take almost no time at all. And even when we get to the end of the movie in the final climax battle, it's very short. We don't have any time to waste. It's maybe 15 minutes in runtime. Maybe. And these action sequences, I feel, are kind of shortchanged because we're wasting time on these other things. So Amber Heard, who is one of the royalty of Atlantis, she talks to Aquaman for a little bit, and she's like, hey, this is your responsibility. You got to go hunt down Steppenwolf. And it's kind of her who talks Aquaman into joining up with the Justice League. Not that they even call themselves the Justice League. In this movie, they will probably call themselves it in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't know. They don't call themselves the Justice League is all that I have to say. But anyway, we get this conversation, and it's very boring. It's just a huge exposition dump. It's not that interesting, and it feels like a waste of time. I feel like we could have gotten Aquaman to join the team in some other more interesting way. Of course, I don't have an example right now because I didn't take that much time to think about it, but I took enough time to think about it that I know that I didn't like how they did it in this movie. So between the Russian family, J.K. Simmons, and Amber Heard, we're wasting quite a bit of screen time here on a movie that's less than 2 hours. So going back to the characters, I feel like the characters really get shortchanged in this movie, especially some of our newer characters. Now, Ezra Miller plays the Flash, and he's supposed to be this comic relief, funny guy. I can't stand him. I think most of his jokes are not funny. They don't land for me. It's not humorous. He spends a lot of time talking about brunch and whether brunch is breakfast or lunch or why do you stand in line for so long and ha ha ha, it's all very funny. No, I don't think it's that funny. So when the Flash is on screen, I find him to be a little grating. I don't enjoy his performance. I think he was supposed to be a more serious character, and all of his little quips and jokes and stuff feels like more of a Joss Whedon involvement. So maybe Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to ease up on that a little bit. I certainly hope that it does, because even though I like when there's comic relief in a movie, it has to be done well, like anything else. And I feel that Ezra Miller's comic relief is not done very well. Now, we have all these other characters who we've all seen and heard of before. Ben Affleck as Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and Henry Cavill as Superman. Superman doesn't come into the movie until much later when they decide to resurrect him, and I've got a whole bunch of opinions on that scene. Not all bad. I have some positive things to say about that, but Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman and Ben Affleck as Batman, they're kind of the two stars of this movie. They're putting together the team, and they're doing a lot of the work and just kind of figuring out everything that needs to get done in order to stop Steppenwolf. So I think of all of the characters, those two probably get the most play, but even so, it's not quite enough. We get one scene when they're talking about resurrecting Superman, and it's a very short scene, and we could have really dove in and gotten to know the characters a little bit more, and really all that we got was Ben Affleck throws in Gal Gadot's face about how she's a hero and doesn't put herself out there and is sad about Steve Trevor being dead. And that's fine. Like, the points he's making are very valid, but I feel like the morality of bringing someone back from the dead, we needed to dive into that a little bit more. I wanted to hear more about, was this okay or is it not? What are the pros and cons for both of them, you know? I would have liked to see a little bit more philosophy on that point, and we just didn't get it. I'm always hearing from DC fans and people online saying, oh, you don't like DC because it's just darker and more mature than Marvel. Ugh. And that's not true. I like these characters. I just want them to be in good movies. Yes, Marvel has lighter tones and it's a lot more fun and it's bright and colorful, but don't you tell me that Captain America Civil War doesn't get into the philosophy of what Captain America feels and what Iron Man feels, and that we don't clearly understand both of their positions and could decide either way with either of them, because we definitely can. So don't give me this nonsense that DC is all dark and gritty and that makes it better, because dark and gritty is fine. The Dark Knight is dark and gritty, but it's also philosophical. It's smart. And I want these characters to be treated seriously and treated like people, you know? Not these titans, you know? They gotta have opinions and personalities, and we just don't get to dive into that enough. And when we do dive into it, it's not enough. And speaking of not enough, let's talk about Ray Fisher as Cyborg, because we get like nothing of him. And I want to bring up a very specific example. When we finished watching the movie last night, I asked my wife what she thought of it, how she felt, and she said, well, I liked it a lot more the second time, because when we watched it in theaters, I didn't know who a lot of these characters were, and I was trying to figure out who was who and get them to understand, like, what are their positions and what are they feeling about things and what their motivations are. And the movie kind of does a really poor job of doing that. And especially with a movie that has an ensemble cast like this, it's important to understand who the characters are and what their positions are. And I think that's what's important about having prior movies. Now, I'm not saying that they have to do everything the exact same way Marvel does, because Black Widow and Hawkeye did not have their own movie before the Avengers. They, in fact, still haven't had their own movies. We have not seen Black Widow yet. I would really like to, but that's a whole separate conversation. But the point is that these characters were introduced in other movies in very small ways. Black Widow was a very major part of Iron Man 2, and Hawkeye made a short appearance in the first Thor movie, but I feel like his character in the Avengers is not a huge in front of everybody character, so it doesn't matter as much. But the point is, before the Avengers started, we knew who most of these characters were, so the introductions we did need were able to be done in a timely manner and figure it all out. And it did not take 35 minutes either, I can tell you that. That the whole team of the Avengers is thrown together very quickly. It does not take 35 minutes. So going back to Ray Fisher's Cyborg, we know almost nothing about him going into this movie. There is a very small clip of him in Batman v Superman when Wonder Woman is reading Lex Luthor's emails, and that's it. That's all we get. And in the trailers and stuff, it seemed like there was going to be a lot more with Cyborg, and we were going to get to know how he feels about like going from football star to this half robot machine and all these different things with his character, but we just didn't get it. And it's unfortunate because he is probably the least recognizable character of this entire cast, and so we don't really get him. Now, we did get a little bit more stuff with Aquaman, and like I said, he had his little moment with Amber Heard's character, Hera, and so we had a little bit more time to get to know him in that sense. But for Cyborg, he's just kind of pouting and like dragging his feet throughout the whole movie, and then all of a sudden he's happy and quipping and making jokes with everybody, and now he's fine, I guess. And we don't really get any kind of progression that takes us from point A to point B on who he is as a character. Actually, I don't even think we really get a point A at all. We're just given little tiny fragments of who he is, and then we have to put it together as we go. Hence why my wife was so confused, and that's why she enjoyed the second viewing more, because now that she kind of knew who the characters were, she could now this time focus on the story and kind of understand what the story was. So, this plot is kind of all over the place, and like I said, there's so many things jammed into this movie that it just makes it confusing for people who are not familiar, you know? And you could make the argument that maybe this movie was made for only the really diehard fans, and that's fine. Movies can be made for really diehard fans. Rogue One is an excellent example of a Star Wars movie that is made for hardcore Star Wars fans, but regular fans can enjoy it as well. You don't have to know all of the things, but you can still really enjoy it. I like Rogue One a lot, and I am a hardcore Star Wars fan, and I know all the things, and that's great. But my wife, who's not as into Star Wars, also really likes Rogue One. And even as an extension, my mom, who knows even less about Star Wars, really likes Rogue One. I think it might even be her favorite Star Wars movie. So there's a way to find the balance here where you can make the hardcore fans happy and also introduce a new batch of fans, because when you're releasing a major motion picture, you need to make it widely available. And even when this movie came out, it wasn't widely available. The audiences were not responding to this movie, and that's why this movie only made $93 million opening weekend. I'm pretty sure that's how much it made. Less than $100 million in its opening weekend. And that just goes to show the marketing for this movie was quite poor. The movies that came before it were not terribly well received, and going into this movie, audiences were not particularly excited, and they didn't show up. They didn't come to watch this movie. And there's one thing that I remember specifically from when this movie came out. Now, I'm going to quickly look up these stats because I didn't look it up at the time I was making my notes. Where's Box Office Mojo? Here we go. Let's look up Justice League. Okay, so Justice League's opening weekend was just shy of $94 million in 2017. And let's compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy, which came out 3 years before it. On its opening weekend, made $94.3 million. So Justice League wasn't even able to make more money than Guardians of the Galaxy, and nobody knew who Guardians of the Galaxy was at the time. Everyone was just able to trust Marvel at that point because they put out quality content. Justice League it's a movie that has both Batman and Superman in it and Wonder Woman, and it wasn't able to even crack $100 million in its opening weekend. So what does that tell you about how audiences respond to the movies that DCs are putting out, and how the marketing was handled, and just everything that's going on around these productions? People are just not as super into these movies as they should be, and that's a real problem. So I hope that Zack Snyder's Justice League is a lot better, but we'll just have to wait and see. Henry Cavill, though, when he comes in, I think Henry Cavill is really great in this movie. When he's first resurrected, he's really disoriented, and they have a little action sequence with that. And actually, let's talk about that right now. I don't really like how they decided to resurrect Superman. I just, like I said before, the conversation that they had, it just was very surface level stuff, and I would have liked a little bit more. But when they actually did it, and they're fighting Superman, I didn't mind that stuff at all. I thought it was a fine action sequence, and it really shows that Superman is the toughest there is. He's super strong, he's super fast, he's super big, and nobody can stop him. And my favorite moment in probably the entire movie is in this fight scene where Superman is holding back Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and the Flash is running around to try and get the drop on Superman. And while the Flash is moving really quickly, you can see Superman's eye moves, and it reveals that Superman can also move really fast. So he picks up on the fact that the Flash is moving fast, and then they have a whole big super race, and it's crazy, and I really like that moment. But then we have Batman show up, and Superman is not happy about having Batman there, because Batman's basically the reason that Superman died in the last movie. So he wants to go take some revenge, and he says some weird things, and his face looks really weird just because of the whole mustache thing. I don't think I need to retell the entire story, but basically Henry Cavill, during the reshoots, he had a mustache because he was shooting for Mission Impossible, and he wasn't allowed to shave his mustache, so they had to digitally remove his mustache, and his face looks really digital and weird and fake, and it's so distracting. It's so distracting. So luckily for us, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, we're not going to have any of that footage, so we're going to have just normal Henry Cavill face, and I'm very looking forward to not being distracted by that. But Henry Cavill's performance itself, I think it's really good. I think they finally found the hopeful Superman, not brooding, sad, not happy about anything Superman. He seems really filled with hope and justice and the American way. So that's really good. I like Henry Cavill a lot about this movie. Seeing as I'm talking about positives, let me talk about one other that I really liked. I really liked the opening scene of this movie. The movie opens with a robber breaking out of this building that he's robbing, and he's walking on the roof, and he sees Batman. And Batman tracks this guy down, and he dangles him over a roof because he's using him as bait to get a parademon to attract him, because there's these parademons around and Batman's hunting them down. I really like that action sequence, and I find it a really good setup for the movie. But then later when we meet Steppenwolf and everything like that, it kind of falls apart and it doesn't have a lot of weight. But that opening scene itself, I find really strong and really well put together. So that's one positive thing that I have to say about the movie. Between Superman's eye turning and moving really fast and the parademon hunt at the very beginning of the movie, we have a couple positive things to talk about here. Now, let me talk about something that is not that positive, and I kind of mentioned it briefly already, but the visual effects for this movie are horrendous. It looks really bad. Between Steppenwolf and Superman's face and the parademons, and whenever characters are jumping or diving, or if a cape is digital, everything looks obviously fake. Very, very poor. And I don't understand why, for the character of Steppenwolf, he looks mostly human in this version. I don't understand why they couldn't have just put him in prosthetics or makeup of some kind, because it looks so bad. And there are ways to make it look way better. And I don't want to have to keep drawing to Marvel saying oh, look how good Thanos looks in Infinity War and Endgame, because he does look really good. And I don't understand why Steppenwolf couldn't have looked just as good, because these movies were made kind of at around the same time. But let me look at a different movie instead. Look at the new Planet of the Apes movies with Andy Serkis. The main character is a digital ape, and it looks amazing. Granted, it doesn't look as great in the first one, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but in Dawn and War, it looks remarkable. It's so, so good. I love those movies, by the way. If you haven't seen them, you should check them out. But the visual effects for them are just dynamite. They're magnificent, and I don't understand why a movie as big budget as Justice League suffers so much in its visual effects. When it's a action superhero driven film, you should be putting money into your visual effects. So I don't really know what happened as far as that stuff goes, but In any case, we don't have very good visual effects in this movie, and it's quite distracting. The musical score, it's fine. It's by Danny Elfman. I would have preferred if Hans Zimmer did it, because he did Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, and I thought that those scores were really quite good. But this one is fine. It's nothing special or nothing really to freak out about. A couple more things I want to talk about here, and then I'm going to start wrapping up. We have 2 post-credit scenes in this movie. One of them is midway through the credits, and it's the Flash and Superman are going to have a race, and Superman says, "Oh, if you lose, you're off the team." "No, I'm just kidding. You have to buy us brunch." And sure, that's fine. I don't understand. How does the Justice League make money? Does Batman just pay them? I don't know what they do. Well, I guess some of them do have actual jobs. I don't think Cyborg has a job, but I don't think he needs money. He can probably just get his own money if he really needs it. I don't know. But that's the first post-credit scene, and it's kind of fun. And then we had one at the very end of the movie. And this post-credit scene is Lex Luthor has broken out of prison, and he wants to make his own evil Justice League. And there's another character who shows up. Is it Deadshot, or I don't know the name of the character. Is Deadshot the one who's in Suicide Squad, or is Deadshot the one... I don't know. Either way, it's some character who wears a mask and has guns. And he's invited to join this Justice League. And nothing has come from this scene. This scene came out 4 years ago. We haven't seen or heard of anything about it since then. And that leads into my final point that I want to talk about is the DC Extended Universe, or the DCEU, whatever you want to call it. A lot of the movies that came after Justice League kind of ignore that Justice League ever happened. So Aquaman completely ignores the events of Justice League, because Aquaman and Mera have scenes together in Justice League, and in Aquaman, they're acting as if they're meeting for the very first time. So take that as you will. Wonder Woman 1984 kind of ignores that all of this happened. I haven't seen Birds of Prey because I didn't think it looked very good, and it's a follow-up to Suicide Squad, which is the worst movie I've ever seen. So I have no idea how that ties in. And then we're getting a new Batman, and we had Joker, and all of these movies that they're making that don't tie into anything or are their own secluded universe. It's fine that they want to do that, but then when they have these actors playing the same characters in other movies, but they're not connected to the other movies, that's going to cause a lot of confusion with the audience, myself included. I'm confused. How am I supposed to treat these movies? Are they all part of the same universe, or are they not? I just need a definite thing. Okay, is Zack Snyder's Justice League gonna be the canon version that fits into this universe? Maybe, I don't know. I hope it's good. I doubt it, but we'll see when it comes out, and we'll make judgments from there. I'll do an episode about it. But I think I've ranted enough about this movie for today. Justice League from 2017. It's not good. I don't like it. I rewatched it again specifically so I could sit down and do this episode and be able to talk about it accurately. And while I had a couple of positive things to say, for the most part, this is a bad movie. If you enjoy it, that's great. I'm very happy for you. I just can't find any way to say that I like this movie. I'm going to sit down and watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. I really hope that it's good. But like I said, I don't hold much hope for it. So I'm going to wrap things up for this conversation today. So what I'm going to ask you guys, the audience, what do you think of 2017's Justice League? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Am I completely wrong on some of these things? I would love for you to let me know. You can reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PottleNathan, and you can find the show on Instagram at Movies Are Awesome Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to me rant today. It was kind of fun. I liked doing today's episode. It's good to switch it up every now and then, so thank you for listening to that. So we'll see you next time, and as always, if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.